Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Duke Wisdom Podcast. As I promised last time, which is like ages ago now, we're going to be doing a Duke in the NBA episode today. And on the topic of it being an entire eternity ago since I've recorded, I want to talk about how I want to get more regular with recording these podcasts. And I think a way that I need some help maybe during the off season for that is some of the existing members of the Duke Wisdom Network and some of the other listeners who are not part of the Duke Wisdom Network. I want to let you know that I know you hear that sort of pseudo ad read I do during these episodes that I recorded way back when I first started it. You know, if you want to come on the podcast with the new mic and everything, the new setup, I'm hopefully becoming more confident in having other people, other guests come on the podcast. And that's something I'm going to be setting up, because I think that's a good way that we're going to get some interaction. We're going to get some good conversations going, as there are less and less storylines over the course of like July and stuff like that. You know, it's kind of a little bit of a dry period. Not entirely, obviously. There's like the NBA Summer League going on. There's recruiting storylines going on, that kind of thing that I'll be talking about here on the Duke Wisdom Podcast. So please keep listening. Trust me, this really is a year-round sport. Basketball really is a year-round sport. I can attest to that. You know, back playing high school sports, there were people who would play soccer or they'd play lacrosse, and they're like, oh, you know, I finally have to go to practice. And it's like a couple weeks before the season starts. But for me, I'm like, what do you mean you finally have to go? Like, basketball season ended whenever it ended, depending, you know, how good or bad you were. We weren't great, so our season ended in like mid to late February, and then we were back in workouts like a few weeks later, and we got like 1 month off in August because I think they made them give us a month off or something like that. But basketball is completely and totally a year-round sport, so that's why this is. And I'm thankful for that as a basketball junkie, because that means I get to just consume content and then create content, because basketball is just constantly happening. And so obviously college basketball is kind of a November to April thing. But then in May, we still kind of got some straggling transfer storylines. We've got the NBA Combine, the NBA playoffs going on, which is going to be a big topic of today's conversation. And then we've got, you know, looking forward to the NBA draft. The finals wraps up in June. You get Summer League, that kind of thing. On the other side of things, you have the WNBA starting up also in May, and that going through. And then the Olympics this year in July is something that I'll certainly be talking about. So, you know, basketball is just year round, man. And I'm excited to be able to talk about all these other things going on in the sport. I also want to talk about something else kind of going on in my own life. I think the last time I uploaded an episode was like a day prior to my graduation. So I've graduated now, which is kind of crazy. So no longer behind enemy territory, so to speak. I'm just a dude now with a degree, I guess. So that's pretty cool. Looking forward to some life decisions. That's something that, you know, may or may not have an impact on what I do here and how I'm able to cover games in person or not. There's a potential job opportunity I'm looking at that I'm not going to talk about at length here, especially because it has not come to fruition or anything like that. But I'm excited about where life's going to take me, and I'm excited about where Duke Wisdom is going to go, because I think that there's, you know, obviously I think you've seen, if you clicked on this podcast, you've seen that the Duke Wisdom logo changed in the last few weeks. That's because my brother Billy, who is also a J School graduate from UNC, he's a graphic designer. He made that original logo as like one of his first projects for an introduction to graphic design class back in 2017. So I've been using the original Duke Wisdom logo now for, say, like 6.5, almost 7 years. And so finally he said he could do a lot better. And as a graduation gift, he designed a myriad of different kind of logos with text fonts that are unique to Duke Wisdom. So obviously you have the new logo in general, the new logo for the podcast, font only logos, kind of header kind of images with the established 2013 date on them. And I think those are really cool as well. And so I'm very thankful to have that updated. And I know you guys saw that. And I'm hoping, and here's a little bit of an incentive, and I'll plug this even more when it comes. But actually, I'm thinking about some Duke Wisdom Network, if you join it, kind of having incentives with some sort of merchandise with Duke Wisdom, because with that font, that's something that I can kind of now do, is create merchandise for Duke Wisdom, which I'm excited about that possibility. And I just wanted to float that idea out there so everybody listening is kind of already aware of it before I put that officially out into the world a little bit later into the summer. So be on the lookout for that. Obviously join the Duke Wisdom Networks, because whatever, perks that ends up presenting to people in the Duke Wisdom Network, it doesn't matter when you join. You don't have to join then. You can go ahead and join now, and those will be available to you then as well. And so got some projects in mind that I'm wanting to get going in the next few weeks, but I've talked long enough about my own personal life. Honestly, I never know how much you guys really care about that, but I want, I think a big part of this is you want to know the guy behind who you're listening to. And so I've always wanted to build, I know so much about media today is building a personal brand. And maybe, who am I to sit here and tell you about myself a little bit? I don't know, but it's maybe you guys like it. Who knows? Let me know if you think I should shut up about anything that happens in my personal life. But anyway, so all that aside, let's get into some Duke and the NBA topics.
Want to join a community of Duke accounts publishing news, theories, and predictions on Duke athletics? Join the Duke Wisdom Network. Just go to dukewisdom.org/join network today and fill out the form with your name and social media. Or you can DM at Duke_Wisdom on Twitter or Instagram. Become a part of the community of Duke fans publishing their takes today. Again, that's dukewisdom.org/join network, or DM at Duke_Wisdom on Twitter or Instagram.
Obviously, the NBA playoffs going on. I tweeted the other day where basically it's like, unless the Indiana Pacers somehow string together a run to win the NBA championship, we're looking at a guaranteed former Duke basketball player winning an NBA championship this season, whether that is Jason Tatum with the Boston Celtics, which would obviously mean that Duke is in strong contention for its first ever finals MVP if Boston wins. Or it could be Dallas, where you get Kyrie Irving, who obviously you can't rule out of a possible finals MVP for Kyrie, but you have to think if Dallas wins, Luka Doncic is going to be the finals MVP in that scenario. But then also, I think you have to look at Derek Lively, and that would be an interesting thing for Dallas, because it would be the first time that Duke's ever had two starters at the same time on the same championship team. That's never happened before. Duke has had two players on the same championship team just once before, in 2016 with Kyrie Irving and Dante Jones, but obviously Dante Jones wasn't a starter. He really didn't play much at all for that Cleveland team. So this would be a very unique thing for Dallas to win, with Kyrie and Derek Lively both starting. Obviously, there's also Wendell Moore Jr. in Minnesota. So the Timberwolves, who just closed the defending champions Denver Nuggets in 7 games, if they were to win, Duke would have Wendell Moore as a champion. But there's varying degrees there, though, right? Because there's the Wendell Moore who only averages 0.7 points per game here in his second season in the NBA. So if Minnesota wins, you get a champion, you get a guy who's really not playing a big role. If you get Dallas, you're getting two guys who play big roles. And if you get Boston, you're getting a franchise player, which Duke has never experienced. Kyrie Irving certainly was a star when Cleveland won in 2016. He played a massive role in sealing the deal for that championship. Everybody knows about that Game 7 dagger he hit in Golden State, but he wasn't the best player. That was LeBron James, right? And so it would be different to get Jason Tatum with a ring. And I guess I'll start by talking about Jason Tatum, who's just been toiling away in the Eastern Conference Finals and / the finals once in 2022. Tatum's in year 7 right now in the NBA, and he has gone to the Eastern Conference Finals 5 times, and this is his 5th time. The first 4 times came without a ring. I think it's an interesting dynamic because I'm a Milwaukee Bucks fan. And so Tatum's been in the league now 7 years. He's made the Eastern Conference Finals 5 times. The 2 times he didn't make it are the 2 times the Bucks did. So I've been at a sort of unique position where when it comes to the NBA, I'm sort of rooting for Jason Tatum, but I'm not also because he is the primary competition of my squad. So it's difficult seeing Boston be successful, but it's made easier because of Jason Tatum and also Drew Holiday, former Milwaukee Buck. Shout out to Drew. But I think that Boston has a good shot at winning this. Boston has looked honestly a little bit rocky in the playoffs so far, which is crazy to say for a team that's only lost 2 total games through the first 2 rounds, defeating Miami in 5, who went to the finals last year, and then Cleveland in 5 as well. Well, they got Indiana in the conference finals, and I don't expect them to lose that series. I've got Boston in 6. That's my projection. Indiana's got enough going for them to where they'll take a couple games. I'd liken it actually to that 2021 kind of Bucks-Hawks kind of conference finals, where I think that they'll take more games than they probably should on face value, but they're not going to get the win. And that's how I feel Indiana is very, very akin to Atlanta in that way. Boston feels like it's got a pretty easy path to the finals, and they're goods and bads with that. They're going to be less worn down, although Porzingis has missed significant time with injury, and they're going to need him back by the finals, especially if they draw Minnesota in the finals. But for obvious reasons, Boston has been worn down. It's an advantage to play less games, though, for that reason. More rest, more recoup time for Porzingis, that kind of thing. But also, they haven't played the same championship level competition. Boston is yet to play a team that I feel is genuinely ready to compete for a championship at all to get through the Eastern Conference. And typically, if you don't have to play anybody before them, you're not quite as battle tested. When you look at like Minnesota, who had to beat the Phoenix Suns. I mean, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Brad Beal, Grayson Allen, not playing that well is Phoenix, but still, those are players with championship pedigree, with finals pedigree that they swept, and then played the defending champions, who I really believed was going to defend their championship this season, and knock them off in 7, taking 3 games in Denver. That's flexing your mettle in a lot of ways if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves. And if they're to get to the finals, they got to get through Dallas, who's absolutely no slouch, who's been to the conference finals now twice in 3 years. They'd have to beat Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. That's no easy task, and they will be far more battle tested once they get to the finals. And I think the same is even true for Dallas. Beating the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, that's no easy task. James Harden. And then not even that, but beating the 1 seed in the West as well in Oklahoma City. So beating Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the runner-up for MVP this season, and Holmgren and that whole young squad that's been great this season, and doing so in 6 games, I think Dallas has been battle-tested. And obviously, if they have to get to the finals, they have to get through what has proven to be an absolute menace of a defensive team and just a fantastic squad in the Minnesota Timberwolves. And so I think either way, you're looking at a team that is more battle-tested. And you can look at that 2 ways, where it's like Dallas or Minnesota might be beat. They might be tired, man, just playing these tough series, back to back to back to back to back. And then, Boston, who's just kind of cruising through. And I don't know. I think it's an interesting dynamic, right? I think it's an interesting dynamic. But here's my other point of this. I think you can see how teams are playing, but there's also another thing in the NBA that is really apparent in the NBA. You can just sort of look at an NBA team and go, this team's ready to win an NBA title. Or this team's not ready to win an NBA title. Maybe they will be someday, or I don't think they'll ever be ready. I always felt that they won't ever be ready with the Miami Heat. Like, even when they made it to the finals, I had zero doubts they'd lose to the Lakers in 2020. And the same thing with Denver last season, because they just weren't a championship team. Still aren't, never will be. And that's just kind of how I feel about them. Clearly not a bad team, obviously not. And I think in 2021, when Milwaukee beat Brooklyn, at that point, I was like, the Bucks are now going to win the championship, even though it was a tough battle. And Phoenix was a very good team. And, Atlanta was playing well, but Atlanta clearly wasn't a championship team. I don't think the Clippers were either without Kawhi Leonard. And then it was very obvious to me once they got to the finals. I was like, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, good team. Finals team, not a championship team. Even when they went up 2-0, I just couldn't bring myself to believe that the Bucks were going to lose that series because the Bucks felt like they had done their due diligence. They're a championship team. And so there's a lot of things like that. 2022 when Boston made the finals that year, to me, they didn't look like a championship. They weren't a championship team yet. They just weren't built like that yet. But now they've developed, they've added pieces. Now Boston is a championship team. And among the final four teams, they're the team that I look at and go, this is a team ready to win an NBA title. I kind of look at Minnesota right now thinking, yeah, they could do it. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But they kind of seem like a team that's make it to the finals and lose and then get back later kind of squad. But I could eat my words on that. Obviously, there are exceptions to this rule. The Detroit Pistons in 2004 broke every single one of the rules I just pointed out. They didn't pass the eye test like the Lakers did, but they won. There are exceptions. This rule obviously doesn't pan out every single time. But I think you have to think about Boston passes that eye test. Minnesota's kind of on the line to me, but Dallas doesn't pass the eye test yet. They're a team that I can see in the finals, but not win the finals. Indiana's a team. Forget about the Pacers, and that's not just me being salty because they beat the Bucks, or that they don't have any Duke guys on roster, and so I'm trying to rule them out. Indiana's just been gifted many, many, many injuries. They're going to do more with Boston than they probably should, and even if they somehow upset Boston, Dallas and Minnesota might as well go ahead and pop the confetti off. They're winning the title. But I think, we're in a unique position also this year. The NBA is in a unique position where this season we will have the 6th consecutive unique champion. So 2019 Raptors, then Lakers, then Bucks, then Warriors, Nuggets, and then whoever wins this year. That'll be 6 different teams winning a championship, which is unheard of, really, in the NBA, which is an organization and a league that has been run by dynasties. I mean, just before this run, you had Golden State winning 3 out of 4. You had Miami going back to back. You had San Antonio winning like every other year during the 2000s. You had the three-peat Lakers, the three-peat Bulls twice. The back-to-back bad boys, the Showtime Lakers. This is a league that has been built upon dynasties. And right now, there is no such dynasty. There is perhaps more parity in the NBA than ever. And we're seeing that parity really being played out amongst the young players. And those young players, in a lot of cases now, are Blue Devils. Now, Kyrie's not necessarily a young player anymore. He's actually a 13-year NBA veteran, which feels kind of crazy to say. But you're seeing these young stars. We're going to get a ring from either Jason Tatum, from Luka Doncic, from Anthony Edwards, or, God forbid, Tyrese Halliburton. But, one of those, young stars is going to get a championship ring, which I think is kind of cool. But you see these young Duke players. I've been just kind of yapping about the big picture NBA, and I want to talk about kind of the Duke perspective here, where we're either going to get a ring from Tatum, and we're going to get Duke's first Finals MVP in all likelihood, which is a huge, massive step. But then there's also this guy who was a player who was a slow developer during his freshman season at Duke, but is already second team all rookie, got snubbed. Derek Lively should have been first team all rookie over Brandon Podziemski from the Warriors. But all that aside, you're looking at a guy who's a rookie and is already a starter and contributing in a massive way. I mean, look at what Derek Lively did in that second round series against the Thunder. In a 6-game series, Dallas and Oklahoma City scored the exact same number of points through 6 games. But Derek Lively, when he was on the floor, highest plus minus of any Dallas Mavericks rookie in a playoff series all time. The Mavericks were plus 71 during that series with Lively on the floor. And so that means they were minus 71 with Lively off the floor. That is just mind-numbing. That is a ridiculous stat, and that shows his impact. I mean, if you're a Duke fan, you saw it. In 2023, Derek Lively's impact on the floor, when he's on the floor, is massive. And when he come off the floor for Duke, it felt like a different team. They struggled so much more than when they did when Derek Lively was on the floor. He is truly, truly, truly a game changer. And we're seeing young guys like that from Duke have these massive impacts. like Tatum and to a lesser degree, but still a big degree, like Derek Lively right now. And it makes you kind of think, and you look at other teams and what these young stars are doing. Minnesota, an 8 seed in the play-in last season, now looking to go to the finals. Dallas not even in the playoffs last season, looking to go to the finals. And so you kind of turn your head to some of these other Duke young stars like Paolo Banchero in the Orlando Magic. You know, you tell me last year that Minnesota could win a championship this year, I probably wouldn't have believed you, which is kind of how I feel about if you tell me that about Orlando right now. But Paolo has been terrific, an all-star in his second season, and you're kind of thinking, can Paolo Banchero be a finals MVP within the next however many years? And then you're thinking, well, if Zion Williamson can stay healthy, can Zion Williamson be the Anthony Edwards of New Orleans? I think he can be, but I think that's more dependent upon how New Orleans can shape the rest of the roster around Zion and if Zion's healthy, that kind of thing. But there's so much young talent and more talent coming in, obviously, with Cooper Flagg, Jared McCain, but to an even larger degree when they get into the league, Cooper Flagg and Kamen Malawach will be big names to watch in the NBA. It's an exciting time because I think throughout a lot of kind of Duke in the NBA history, you've seen good players for a couple of seasons. They get an all-star appearance here and there. They're great players, but they're not championship like changing, defining franchise talents. So like Carlos Boozer, great all-star. Luol Deng, great all-star. Elton Brand, great all-star, right? Not championship-defining franchise talent. Grant Hill, I think, was a championship-defining franchise talent, but injuries held him back from that. Now, Kyrie Irving has been that, but not to quite the level that I think we'd like to see, because you have to hear always from Carolina fans about the Jordans, the Worthies, the players like that. And Duke they never really had a guy like that. Now, albeit, Carolina's NBA presence has certainly dwindled. Kobe White's a good player now. Harrison Barnes, not bad. Cole Anthony, not bad. A couple others, Cam Johnson. But they only got like 10 guys in the league, and they're not very convincing. All of their arguments have to be made from a 1990s or early 2000s perspective. But Duke is one of the kings of the NBA right now, they and Kentucky. And I think there's kind of this look where Kentucky's kind of outdoing them a little bit right now with success from those players, with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Davis, Jamal Murray, Bam Adebayo. The list goes on for Kentucky. They've got so many really talented guys. Duke has quite a few themselves, though, but they're not translating as much into championship pedigree at the top of the ladder. And so I think that's got a really good opportunity to change this season, especially if the Boston Celtics win. Jason Tatum being a finals MVP is a massive step for Duke in the NBA. I think the next step is to get Duke's first league MVP. Tatum seems like a prime candidate for that at some point. Especially if they're able to get a title under their belt. But I think that this is such an interesting thing to talk about, because a lot of people were like, well, Duke has all these successful NBA players, but it hasn't translated to national championships necessarily. And that might be true, but they're like 17 and 18-year-old guys when they're there, and they're certainly doing well. You take these guys because they lead to recruiting more guys like that. You get Jason Tatum, it helps you get Zion Williamson. You get Zion Williamson, it helps you get Paolo Banchero. You get Paolo Banchero, it helps you get Cooper Flagg, right? They see other guys becoming NBA Rookie of the Years. They see other guys being first-team All-NBA, All-Star Game MVPs, Finals MVPs potentially, and that helps massively from a recruiting standpoint. And also, it's just fun from a fan standpoint to get to see guys that you watched in college. I mean, it's so much more fun to be able to say, I was just watching that guy at Duke a few years ago. Here he is cooking in the NBA All-Star Game. I've got his All-Star jersey. I've got his NBA jerseys. I've got this massive trading card collection of this guy. It's cool from a fan perspective, right? Like, it's much cooler to see the Jason Tatums, the Paolo Bancheros, the Kyrie Irvings, the Zion Williamsons, the Brandon Ingrams, than it is to see the Daron Sharps. No offense to Daron Sharp. Great player. Good guy. But that's just kind of how it is. And if you don't get those all-stars, I mean, looking forward to your guys in the league is just a little bit less exciting. And Duke in the NBA is very exciting. They had 25 different players touch the NBA in some different way this year. I think 24 of them were on the final day roster. The outlier there being Matt Hurt, who signed a pair of 10-day contracts due to a lot of medical hardships that the Grizzlies were facing this season. And he played in about 8 games and averaged like 4 points per game. I was glad that Matt finally got that breakthrough in the NBA. I'm waiting for DJ Stewart. I'm sure I'll be talking more about both of those players more during the summer league kind of era this summer. But I think that, it's such an interesting time for Duke in the NBA right now. And so the last thing I want to do in this episode, we're going to be talking more about Duke in the NBA stuff as the finals presses on, as summer league, NBA draft, all that, Olympics. Obviously, we'll talk about some stuff because Jason Tatum on the Olympic team. So there's stuff to talk about there. But let's bridge the gap between this new Duke in the NBA era and kind of the Duke NBA era of old, where most of the guys that were successful were graduating, older when they got in the league, might have got a couple all-star appearances, or 7 in Grant Hill's case. And so here's the question. What is the Duke in the NBA Mount Rushmore? I think it's changing by the day. And then what are the order of those top 4? Now, I'm planning on doing like a top 10, 15, 20, 25 all-time Duke players in the NBA list. At some point this summer, that's going to go down. So be on the lookout for that article on dukewisdom.org. But right now, I think here's where I stand. This run by the Celtics drastically could impact this ranking, right? Because the top 3 is clear, and 3 of the top and the 4 guys on the Mount Rushmore are clear. They are in order of all-star appearances: Kyrie Irving, who has 8 all-star appearances. That's the most of any former Blue Devil. Grant Hill, who has 7, and Jason Tatum, who has 5. So there are arguments for all 3 of these guys to be the Duke in the NBA all-time GOAT, right? Grant Hill was a guy who was competing with Michael Jordan. He was in the top 3 of MVP voting. I believe the only Blue Devil to ever do that. Tatum is yet to do that, I think. I don't remember where he placed last year, but it wasn't top 3. So he's never placed top 3. Grant Hill has. And so that, I believe. And so that's interesting. Got that. You got the 7 all-star appearances. Arguably before the injuries, Hill might have been the superior player to the other 2 guys. And that's huge. And Grant Hill was culturally a big player, a huge name in the league. But then injuries held Grant back. And so he only got a decade. And then that was it for him. He played about another decade, but he just wasn't the same player. He wasn't getting all-star appearances. He certainly wasn't competing for MVPs. Grant Hill's been first-team All-NBA. He has multiple All-NBA selections as well. Grant was a fantastic player. He's a Hall of Famer. Duke's first true player to get in there. Obviously, Lefty Drizel's in the Hall of Fame, and he played at Duke, but he's in there as a coach. Grant Hill's the first player to get his way into the Hall of Fame as a former Blue Devil. Grant Hill's got a massive argument for this, but I think Kyrie Irving may have eclipsed that argument because Kyrie Irving now has more All-Star appearances. He's been an All-Star Game MVP. He's been All-NBA, never first-team All-NBA, but All-NBA nonetheless. He has helped lead a team to one of the most legendary championship runs of all time. So he's got a ring, and that's what he's got on the other 2 guys right now. Kyrie's got a ring, and he's been a 3-point champion, NBA Rookie of the Year. Grant was also Rookie of the Year. But Kyrie's got a lot of stuff going for him, a whole lot. And he's got a little bit more longevity. The fact that he's in year 13 right now and playing at all-star level for a team that's hoping to make the finals, I think is a massive addition to Kyrie's argument for Duke in the NBA GOAT. And then there's Jason Tatum, who's just 7 years into his career, but he's already got his 5th All-Star appearance. I think there's almost no doubt in my mind that he will pass both Grant Hill and Kyrie Irving in All-Star appearances. He's also been the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, which obviously was not available to Irving or Hill, but Grant couldn't have ever won it, and Kyrie wouldn't have because LeBron would have won it every time that Cleveland went to the finals. So Jason Tatum exclusively has that going for him that no other Blue Devil could. And if they make the finals again this year, he'll be a 2-time Eastern Conference Finals MVP. And really, I think if the Boston Celtics win the NBA title this year, you're looking at Tatum as a 2-time first team All NBA kind of guy, All NBA guy, an All Star guy, NBA All Star MVP. And if you can tack 2-time Eastern Conference Finals MVP and NBA champion and Finals MVP to his resume, I think there really is no question Jason Tatum is the all-time greatest Duke player in the NBA if he finishes the job this year. If he makes the finals, honestly, I still think he might have it. He still probably does have it. If he loses to Indiana, I think that we're still discussing this. The conversation might be moot, honestly, because it might not matter. I mean, literally just give Tatum like one more season and he's probably got it. So I think, honestly, you might be delaying the inevitable if you don't just go ahead and put the crown on Jason Tatum. I think you might as well just go ahead and call him the Duke in the NBA GOAT. I think it probably will be Tatum if it isn't already. And so then you got him, and you got Kyrie, and you got Grant. And I think that's the order I'm going to put them in at the moment. But you're free to order that however you want. The real debate here is who is the fourth guy on the Duke in the NBA Mount Rushmore. Who is it? I think, and there's a lot of different names that can come up. One name, let me float some names. Jeff Mullins is a name that can come up. He has the 4th most All-Star appearances. There's only 4 Duke players all time with more than 2 All-Star appearances. Jeff Mullins is the 4th. He has 3. Not only that, Jeff Mullins is a champion. So he is one of 2 so far former Blue Devils with multiple All-Star appearances and a chip. Actually, I think he might be one of 2 with an All-Star appearance, period, and a chip. So Jeff Mullins is an NBA champion, and that really plays into things. There's only 7 guys in Duke history to win a title. Mullins was the first in 75 with the Warriors, and Danny Ferry in 03 with the Spurs. And you got Battier back-to-back in 12 and 13 with the Heat, Kyrie and Dante Jones with Cleveland in 16. Quinn won in 18 with the Warriors, and then again in 20 with the Lakers, and then Jack White last season with Denver. Those are the 7. And so Jeff Mullins, probably the 2nd most influential player to his championship of any of those players. So that's the argument for Jeff Mullins. There's certainly an argument there. Beyond Jeff, I think you have to look at Elton Brand, a multiple-time All-Star, a guy who's averaging 25 points a game, a franchise player with the Clippers, a number 1 overall pick by the Bulls in 99. He's now been very successful post-NBA, played like 16 years in the NBA, which is nothing to scoff at, 16 or 17. Absolutely nothing to scoff at there. Terrific career, a fringe Hall of Fame career by Elton Brand. I think you then have to look at Carlos Boozer, kind of in a similar boat, I think, on a more successful Utah Jazz team and a more successful Chicago Bulls team than Elton Brand played on with the Clippers and with Philly. So the team success is better for Boozer. He's also an Olympic gold medalist in 08 on that Redeem team. But I think that, I don't know, he wasn't putting up quite the individual statistics as Brand, but arguably he has more accolades overall, potentially. And then there's Luol Deng, who was also a 2-time All-Star on a very good Bulls team with Boozer. And he's kind of the second-hand man to Derrick Rose, or even really the first-hand man for that second All-Star appearance in 13. But Luol Deng was very good, and what Luol Deng did for basketball in Africa is massive. And the role he's played with Kaman Malawach, who's, by the way, going to wear his jersey number 9, next season, which is very cool that we're kind of breaking that jersey number seal at Duke, number 7 being Knipple, and number 8 being Darren Harris, number 9 being Malawach. Anyway, that's an aside. I think Luol Deng's got a little bit of an argument, and I think ultimately you have to kind of already consider Zion Williamson, because some of his numbers that he's already put up through 5 seasons have surpassed anybody I just named. Like, they have been much higher, and he has 2 All-Star appearances, same as Boozer, same as Brand, same as Deng. And so Zion, I think on face value, is a better player than any of them, but he's had such a short career, and even in that short career, he's played so few games. Like, he just hasn't played the games because he's been constantly injured. I mean, the Pelicans have made the playoffs like 2-3 times in Zion's career, and he's never played in a playoff game. He's only played in 1 postseason game, and it was that first play-in against the Lakers this year, and he got hurt. with 3 minutes to go. I you love the guy, and I feel for him, but he just can't stay healthy. And because he can't stay healthy and because of the lack of games he's played, I am going to remove Zion Williamson from my consideration. Now, I want to know who you guys think the fourth one is. I mean, if you think that Tatum, Kyrie, or Grant's not on there, I don't know how to help you. All three of them are clearly there. But the fourth spot is very debatable. I think Zion Williamson will take it soon if he can remain somewhat healthy. But I'm going to remove Zion from the conversation at the moment. I think that Boozer is really good. I think that Dang is really good. I don't think they were as good as Elton Brand. I think accolade-wise, in terms of all-star appearances and championships, Jeff Mullins would take this spot. But I honestly believe who is the better player, who's the closest to being kind of in the Hall of Fame. And so that's why, for me, I'm leaning toward Elton Brand for that fourth spot on the Duke NBA Mount Rushmore. I'm going Jason Tatum, Kyrie Irving, Grant Hill, and Elton Brand. That's where I'm going. And I'm curious to hear what you guys say. I'm going to make a little Mount Rushmore graphic. I'm going to put a question mark over the fourth face because I'm devious. And I'm not going to tell you that I picked Elton Brand because you're going to have to listen to the podcast episode. If you see the tweet, I'm going to make you listen to the podcast episode so that you see who I selected as my fourth guy. Anyway, that's my devious thing aside. I hope you guys enjoyed talking a little bit about Duke in the NBA, unboxing that as we get further into the playoffs, into the finals. We'll talk more about this. We'll get more into it. And next time, barring some crazy news, next time I'm going to be talking some recruiting and everything like that, and also just some further Duke news as well. I didn't talk about Cameron Sheffield, so make sure you tune in Thursday. I'll be talking about Cameron Sheffield. That'll be a fun one. As always, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow the podcast wherever you're listening, whether that be Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, man. I'm trying to grow the sub count on YouTube, but that would be very appreciated. Thank you so much. But also Amazon, if you're like some of the 12 people that listen through that. I don't think I get a whole lot of listenership via Amazon. I don't post the links, so that really might be my own fault. But a majority is YouTube, Spotify, Amazon. But Amazon, no, Spotify, YouTube, Apple, my bad. I'm getting delirious here around minute 37 of this podcast. Anyway, follow Duke Wisdom on Twitter /X and on Instagram. Thanks so much for listening as always, and I'll talk to you guys later.